we've heard a lot of talk today about know your business goals and what are you trying to achieve for the business. And I think that's a big question for a lot of folks who are running these kinds of programs. So Susan Emerick and Jeanne Murray are going to talk a little bit about measuring performance and value. So Susan, most of you guys know, is co-author with me of The Most Powerful Brand on Earth, and did a lot of great things at IBM around delivering these kinds of programs, but also figuring out how to really prove the business value in ways that matter to the business beyond just getting a little lift and clicks and tweets, but actually dollars that shift budgets. So she, has a lot of great things to say here. And then Jeanne Murray has a lot of experience in brand management and looking at metrics and deriving insights and understanding what does that mean for the business and how do we need to change what we're doing. So they've got a ton of great content here for you guys. Glad you guys are ready and raring to go. Come on up.
Are you guys sick of me yet? Okay. So I don't think that there's anything really more important than showing business value. And it's the hardest thing to do. So before I roll through these slides, I just want to see hands of people in the audience who are trying to prove business value, trying to really get it quantified. Who's struggling with that? It's a lot of hands. Yep, right. So this is a tough nut to crack. It's not easy. Okay. This may seem really familiar. I tried to make it simple. But for us as program managers or people who are trying to really advance a program, these may sound very familiar in terms of being overwhelmed. First and foremost with so much data. Not only were you potentially responsible for quantifying other types of programs, whether they be paid media programs, website traffic. Now you're talking about social. You're talking about all this data from all these different places. It's overwhelming. And if you're feeling that pain, it's real. We don't necessarily have the answers. There is a whole chapter dedicated in the book on how to navigate measurement, and we also provide a full framework. But what I will tell you is that this is a very common problem. The second one is tools. How many tools? And not only can't even keep up, which ones matter? Which ones are the right ones? So instead of being consumed by those two, which, to be honest, I don't think you can keep up, think about what to measure first. This should be first. Why what to measure? Because you want to be thinking about your business goals. What you're going to measure should align to what your business goals are. Then, if you think about that, you'll be able to look at what data is going to help to prove what I'm measuring, right? So rather than thinking about being overwhelmed with all these sources, if you've got your goal defined first, what to measure, you're going to know what sources of data will help you instantiate that, right? Same with tools. So what to measure should be the first question you're asking, but it should always be aligned to your business goals. And when you do that, you'll be able to navigate the tools appropriately. I love this quote from Stephen Covey. It's kind of old, but it still resonates with me. And that is, begin with the end in mind. Underscoring again those desired outcomes that you're looking to have your workforce get behind. And there may be different parts of the organization that have different business goals that they're driving, and I'll talk about motivations in just a minute. But those desired outcomes that you want your program to be able to to be responsible for should support your business goals, right? So if you start with those really, really simple concepts, and then think about that data and what tools are going to help you to get to the end that you're striving for, that will help you weed through being overwhelmed. And the last is the employees and their role. They're going to need to know very clearly, what is my responsibility? How is it that I can get behind achieving this goal? How is it that you're going to be providing me an understanding of how I'm advancing, if whether or not what I'm doing is actually working and making a difference? So Jeanne's going to share a little bit more detail on that, but I just wanted to convey business goals are critical, beginning with the end in mind, those outcomes you're trying to drive, and what the employee's role is and responsibility to helping to drive against those goals. When you think about a measurement framework, what we've seen is a maturity of sorts over the years around things that can be measured, but most of them, for the most part, don't really prove business value, right? So this goes back to the marketing kind of 101 or financial reporting when you think about it. There's pretty much simple things that a business cares about. Either you're increasing revenue or you're decreasing costs. That's pretty much the bottom line. And when you think about creating a measurement framework and proving value for your program, think about that very seriously in terms of the business goals that you're trying to strive for. Is this going to help me prove that the bottom line we're making, more return on the investment we made? Can I prove that? Can I quantify that? Or am I helping the business achieve results that are improved efficiencies, workforce productivity? Do I have a baseline that I can show, here's where we started, here's where we are now, quarter on quarter, or even 6 months, a year out? You're going to need to have a business value realization when you think about your performance measurement and thinking about what data and KPIs are going to support that. So again, back to business goals. Is it focused on revenue generation? Is it focused on decreasing cost? Because pretty much that's what the business cares about. This is a little bit difficult to read, but I promise you it is in the book, and it's in the measurement chapter, I'm pretty sure. But the point of this slide is to describe that depending on the business function and who your stakeholders are, and you might have multiple, they may have very different goals in mind for a component of the program or, for example, an aspect of the program. So if you're in marketing, they primarily care about cost of leads generated. The more leads they can generate for the least amount of cost, they're typically investing in demand gen programs, they're investing in media dollars typically. So the ability to show and demonstrate how a trusted employee can actually generate greater referral traffic, for example, maybe higher conversion rates to leads, or for that matter, help you prove that it might be a more effective way than spending media dollars. If you can prove something like that, which we did at IBM, that is a game changer. So much so that we were able to shift marketing dollars and investments that were going towards media into scaling employee advocacy. Another example of a motivation you may come across would be HR is another example, right? They may have very, very different motivations. So if your goal is supporting talent retention or acquisition, then thinking about external talent referral network of your own employees, that's a very different goal, right? So looking at how are you getting talent acquisition today? or for that matter, how you're retaining your employees today. HR likely has their own measures, but bringing in how employees can help increase productivity to that in a measurable way. Again, the motivation and the business goal should align to your measurement framework. There's a lot more about this in the book, but that just gives you an example. So I'm going to play out the lead gen, demand gen a little bit more. And this is an example of how we were able to demonstrate driving leads through digitally engaged subject matter experts. And one of the things we set out about doing was understanding, and just through trial and error, if we're tracking all of these demand generation tactics and how they refer traffic to our website, which on the website destination page, there would be the offer or call to action. How is it that these tactics are performing in comparison to our digitally engaged experts? So what you see there circled in the red are actually people, and these are real referrals of subject matter experts from their own blogs and mentions to a call to action that resided on the website that we were driving to. And what we did was we said, well, wouldn't it be interesting to look at how do they compare to things that we're spending money on? Demand gen, whether it's paid placement or banners or other promotional demos that we're putting out in the marketplace. And look at what registration is happening as a result of these engaged individuals. And what was amazing to us is the conversion rates. So you look at the conversion rate compared to a software trial, which is the one on the top, is about 65%. But digitally engaged experts were actually able to drive about a 33% conversion rate. You look at that compared to the other demand gen tactics that are here, that's a pretty big eye-opening quantified number, right? And first of all, the ability to prove and track through that digitally engaged experts can actually drive through to a conversion was finding number one, that A, we could track it, and B, we could quantify it. Then the next challenge is, how do you look at that number, which is 2 to 3 times higher than some of the demand gen tactics that we were investing money in, and look at what's a conversion rate to sale. So now you're starting to get into really advanced thinking around quantifying revenue attainment. And is it more efficient and effective to equip employees as compared to media investment? So with that, I'm going to turn over to Jeanne, and she's going to take you through a lot more detail on measuring value, especially what you need to do to equip employees to understand their role.
Thanks. Right, so what we're trying to distinguish too in these next couple of slides is it's one aspect of performance and measurement to show the progress to stakeholders regarding the business outcomes, the program measures. Susan just walked through an example of how to justify more investment in the program because of some of the data. But we also, because this is employee advocacy, and we've had some questions about this earlier today, how do you help employees understand their role in it and how to help them optimize their performance? Not only so that they understand what's going on in the market, but also so they can increase their own effectiveness and remain motivated to contribute. So a couple of examples. So let's say our goal is to measure these values of market interest. And we might have a monthly dashboard or a quarterly dashboard that shows us conversational volume in the market, share of voice that's branded versus unbranded from some of our listening tools, as well as conversational topics. So we can use this data to report to stakeholders about the program effectiveness, but we can also look at this data to help coach the employees on what kinds of things that they should be talking about. So let's say our conversational topic We see in the word cloud, there's security is one of the large words there, as is outcomes. So we might want to feed that back into the employees about what the kinds of things they're blogging about or the kinds of conversations they're getting involved in, and use this as ways to optimize the performance. At the same rate, we see a big drop in May, for example, in conversational volume. So something happened between April and May. What can we do to understand that in the system and get more employees involved, get some assets out there, get the groups forming some new content, et cetera, so that we can monitor this. Another area that you might measure is in mind share against competitors. So share of voice by competitor. If you see, our share of voice is dropping, again in May it started to drop. What does that mean about the kinds of content that we're putting out there and the kinds of content that our employees are using? Same with sentiment. We can look at that from a program measure, but we can also use it to coach employees. So I'll go back to this example of the lead gen. As Susan was mentioning, it's a way to look at the program investment, but it's also a way to look at helping employees optimize. So to increase the yield, we might coach the SMEs with these analytics about how to increase their engagement, how to start conversations on the right topics or the topics that are resonating with conversational volume. And then in the venues where the conversations matter, or maybe where our competitors are present. So again, using all the data to help us not only do program measurement, but also to coach employee advocates using that same data. We also, in some of the programs that Susan and I ran at IBM, we used that individual coaching feedback, and the idea is not to necessarily to read this slide, but to give an idea of the kinds of dashboards that we could use with employee coaching on individual performance. Would include, content that was resonating, which platforms it was resonating on, observations and recommendations about the topics and the engagement. So the point here is to think about how you can use the data to help the employees be more effective. We always thought about it, and we think about it still, as a cycle of doing the listening, doing the analysis of social presence, not only for the brand, but for the topics and for the roles and employees, to enable employees with the best practices. We talked a lot about training earlier, but it's also about which keywords are resonating in the market, where do we want the impact, what competitors are we talking about, and then to measure and feed it back into the cycle, because this is a living system. Whoops, that's the next slide. We didn't have one that says questions. But that's where we are now. So again, the point is to really think about measurement and performance on these several different dimensions. And as you get deeper into the employee advocacy, scaling it in your organization, how you can use the data to help employees get better at it and use it not as a stick, but kind of as a carrot to help move it along.
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear me?
Mm-mm.
It's on. Hello? I don't know. There we go.
There you are.
One of the things I think is incredibly valuable when you provide this kind of performance feedback to employees, it's something that they could never keep up with on their own. But having that kind of intelligence helps them to be more productive. They're very, very busy people. So knowing how to spend their time in the right place, building the right relationships, being more efficient with the little time that they do have, this kind of performance feedback that's quantified through data, and you're really helping them understand what's working, what's not working, and integrating that measurement and performance and value not only to the bottom line of the business, but to the individual employee, is incredibly meaningful, and it's so inspiring. I mean, I think Lewis is no longer here today, but he was one of the participants in our program, and the feedback that we got from employees that said, I would have never been able to have that kind of intelligence on the right relationships to nurture, the right communities to be a part of, what content's resonating or not. And also the whole keyword responsiveness in terms of content optimization and really understanding what conversation's in play. So again, it goes back to roles based of the employee, but also just thinking about a measurement framework that not only helps them be successful, but in line with your business goals and what you're trying to drive for, the ultimate outcomes for your program.
I think another thing that it also helps with is, in participation day to day by an employee in a social program can not look very transformational to them. Or they have 11 followers today and 15 the next day. Is that a big deal? Does it matter? I got retweeted? It's hard to put it in context for that individual. But when you can show them program progress and their role in the progress of the program, they have more context and they start to understand the accumulated value of how this volume increases and raises the water level for everyone.
Mm-hmm. How about questions? Do we have questions? Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
Sometimes I find myself saying that I'd rather measure nothing than measure the wrong things, right? And so as a result, I do a lot of customer journey mapping, like how do people actually buy? So when I look back on, say, your slide where you sort of map out conversion rate, I'm curious if, so for example, subject matter experts might be horrible at sales, because the more they try and sell, the less they are considered to be subject matter experts. They're not trusted advisors, the way the previous presenter was showing that level of trust being so high. But that trusted content, that person whose role it is to engender trust, their conversion rate may be trial software downloads, right? It's like, oh, I'll give it a try. And so rather than keeping all media types accountable to the same conversion rate, I'm wondering if you tested at IBM that everyone's conversion is a little bit different depending upon where they are in that decision cycle. So elevating the brand might be way up at the top, building trust might be next, building trial might be the next thing, and then conversion probably is that software trial, like did it work or didn't it? And how do you test those models out? So they know what their role is. Their role isn't to sell, their role is to engender trust, and they now are being held accountable to that versus conversion.
So there's a few things that are in that question. One is you're getting to employee segmentation and who's being recruited into the program. The reason why I say that is because equipping the right people, it's very important. I can't remember who said it, but it's very important to start with those early adopters that have the expertise to build that trust. And it would be innately something that either they're the thought leader or a deep subject matter expert in a category. So that is natural, if you will, right? But then it gets into the content, either their own user-generated content that they're creating or content that is available to them, either industry-wide, whether it's a study or something, or even brand content that you're making available. And I think the most important thing is thinking about that journey, and again, going back to the employee role, being clear about what role they're playing and being true to that is really important. Because one of the things we tossed around was, gosh, so should we set targets? And we said, no. Let's not go out with, the carrot and come after them with a stick, right? Let's just trial this and see, let's learn from what's happening. And I would say that's really important to look at the data, learn from the data as you start to make those informed decisions. You're going to begin to see not only the role of a particular individual, but also the content that they're sharing what part of that decision-making cycle, the customer journey, do they fit best in? Because not everyone is going to run across that spectrum. So it's just as important to take the intelligence out of the data and learn from it and apply it to not only how you equip the employees to understand their role, but also the effectiveness of the performance measures. Is it working better with a software trial demo? Is it working better, what content did they share, which worked better, right? And what role is true to them as who they are. So there's a lot behind the measurement framework as far as what we did to select employees, recruit them, equip them, right? There's a lot behind, measuring performance and value. So hopefully that answers your question.
I'd like to add to that too, in that if you'll notice, the volume of those SME referrals from that tactic was low, but the yield was high. And what we had done actually was tell the bloggers, if you happen to be talking about this trial download on your blog, use this tactic code. We didn't tell bloggers, now you must talk about the trial download. It was their choice to do so, and because they had the trust and the authority with their user set, people were more likely to click through. So there were two pieces of that really. One is the bloggers had already established that trust and authority with their audience. And then there was a day where they happened to talk about the trial download, and people clicked through and converted. So that trust piece is a really important piece of it. And they didn't start out blogging so that they could drive downloads. But it wound up that was a benefit of when they did discuss a download, it drove more conversions.
Yeah, we'll go to the next. We could say we're going to have a Q&A at the end. So.
Great. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.